Today's lesson is on percents, and I hope I don't insult anyone's intelligence by starting off really basic. I've noticed over the years as a teacher that it's better to start by assuming that nobody knows anything, okay? So our lesson on percent, first of all, cent, right? If you look up cent, 1 cent, right, is 1/100th, or a century is 100 years. Okay, so the prefix cent means per, or it means 100, right? And then percent means, just like it sounds, percent, part, per 100. All right, and if you're in education, you secondary educators, this is called a language support, where I try to help you understand the vocabulary associated with the lesson and how to relate that vocabulary to things that you already know. Anyway, I hope it's safe to assume that people know some basic fraction to decimal conversions. And I hope it's safe to assume that you remember the whole move the decimal point 2 places to change a percent to a decimal. Okay, so that this would be 0.6, right, as a decimal, but then in this case it would be 0.06. Okay, so make sure, I'll leave this one for homework. Make sure you can do this one. Okay, take a second, try this one. Okay, so here it is still as a percent. I move that decimal over 2 places and it's 0.0625. Okay. So next what I want you to do, and this is really the advantage of video lessons, is I can have all of you try a problem, and those of you get it right, then you'll be able to stop the video earlier, and those of you that want to keep, that need some explanation, you'll stay on a little longer and I'll go over these. So I want you to pause the video, try number 2, number 3. I just double checked Ontario County. Actually, now the sales tax is 7.5. When I was a waitress way many years ago, we were using 7.25%, and that was long enough ago that we were even still computing the checks by hand. So Ontario County, I know that's my hometown, might be hometown to some of you as well. So please try, pause the video, try 3 through 4 right now. 2 through 4, I'm sorry. 2, 3, and 4. Try those right now. Okay, here's the answers. And I'm going to move on right now, and then at the end of the video clip, if you got those right, you'll stop the video. Okay, those of you that need an explanation will hang out longer. So anyway, let's keep going. We'll come back to those. In this section, I talk about completing a 2-step or 1-step process rather than a 2-step process. Okay, so I'm sure the training that most of you received is if a suit is 25% off, right? You would do this times 0.25. You would find the discount, and then you would take the discount. I'm just going to call it times, not subtract. I'm 1 step ahead of myself. I'm going to call this D, the discount, but then you would do 175 minus D, right? That's probably how you learned how to do these, way back in like 6th and 7th grade. I want to do this with 1 step instead of 2, although technically you're still doing 2. It's just the first step you're going to do in your head. Okay, if you're 25% off, what percent on are you, right? If you take 25% off, what percent have you left on? Okay, and I hope you can do that mentally. Okay, so you've still got 75% on. So to do this in 1 step, all we have to do is grab our calculator, take 175 and multiply it by 0.75, right? Because the 75% is going to remain. Okay, so do that. Grab your calculator, type that in, and I said to round off in ways that make sense for this whole segment. But actually, I think I gave you lots of nice numbers that come out nicely, even without having to round off. So that would be the final answer. Okay, so let's jump ahead here. Okay, pause the video and try B. Okay, so if you are 30% off, you're 70% on. Okay, so I hope you just multiplied 50 times 0.7, and it works out nicely, $35. Okay, so let's use the same one-step process for when we have an increase. All right, so again, you probably learned to do the 35,000 times 0.03, and then you would take that increase. Okay, so I'll call it R for the raise, right? You'd find the raise, and then you would take the 35K and you would add R to it. All right, to do this in one step, what we have to remember is that this person, they're going to get 3% of this added in, but then they're still going to earn 100% of, oh, sorry. They're still going to earn 100% of their pay. Okay, so what they're really going to end up with is 103% of what they started with. Okay, so to do this in one step, right, where you can just multiply the 35K by 1.03. Okay, so grab your calculator and multiply that while I show you how the distributive property is at work here. Okay, so I hope you got for a final answer $36,050. Okay, but to show you how the distributive property is at play, I wrote 1.03 as 1 plus 0.03 because these two look different but are equivalent. And then I can see that if I solve this by the distributive property, right, this is the way that you probably learned how to do this in grade school, right? Here's the 3% of 35 to get the R, but then here's the plus 35, right? So here's where you get, when I distribute this through, 35 plus, and then over here I called this amount R, the raise, right? But this is how I do this all in one step, which is just a simpler, nicer way to do these. I'm going to leave D for homework. Why don't you try E? All right, pause the video, try E. Okay, so you would want to give her 100% plus her 4.05%. All right, and this would end up, if we round off to the nearest penny, we round off to $12.28. All right, so I'm going to leave the rest of these exercises for homework. If you got 2 through 4 correct, stop the video, you're done. Otherwise, let me go over 2 through 4 with you. Okay. There's 2 different ways we could solve any percent problems. We could set up a proportion. right? Part to whole equals percent out of 100. Okay, and so you could solve this proportion. Or the other way to do this is if we have 9 out of 30, we could simply divide by 30, right? That would get a decimal, and then we would multiply that. So if I do 9 divided by 30, right, I get 0.3, and then I move 2 places over. Because if I do this by cross multiplying, 30x, I'm doing the same steps just in different order. Here's my multiply by 100, which moves the decimal 2 places to the right. Okay, so there's the move 2 places to the right part of this. And then divide both sides by 30. Well, you know, I divide this by 30, right? So there's the same steps, just done in a different order is all. All right, and then in number 3, if you want to find 8%, I assume that the easiest approach to this, and actually if you struggled in the first place, and then you watched the second half of the video, you probably gained clarity on how to find some basic percents, just watching the second half of the video, right? That's probably the way that you would do this that would make the most sense. If you set it up by a proportion, you could say, well, I want to find the part out of the 1500, right? Part to total equals the 8 out of 100. Okay, that would have worked solving a proportion. And then over here, this is 7.25. Well, changing that to a decimal, go over 2 places, so 0.0725. Right? Multiply that by the $80, and that'll give you your answer. Okay, so if you missed any of these, I hope I was just able to clear that up here. Thanks for hanging in here for the last few minutes.